the individual candidate, their passions, and the issues that compel them to seek the office. Each candidate will have a 90-second opening statement and a 90-second closing statement. There will be questions asked each candidate, and they will have 60 seconds to answer. We ask that they only speak about their stance and platform and not criticize the opposing candidate. This is not a debate, it's an informational forum. If you speak about another candidate's opposing position, they will not have the chance to respond, and that will not be fair. So please keep to your own thoughts, accomplishments, skills, positions, and preferences that will help us appreciate who you are and how you might vote on issues that would come when serving our community. I'd like to recognize all the candidates for seeking office. It takes a lot of strength and energy to follow your convictions. I salute you all for choosing to take time away from yourself and family to serve our community. Thank you. We will ask each of you in random order the same questions and give you 60 seconds to answer them. We'll alert you at 30-second, 15-second, and when your time is up. Please respect the time limits. The questions were selected by a committee comprised of Rotarians and taken from a list of questions that were sent to us by residents. This is one of 4 meetings which we'll have. Today is District 26. On the 14th, Wednesday, District 27 and District 40. On Thursday, October 15th, we'll have the Executive Council and State Senate. And finally, October 9th, we'll have the county level candidates. We look forward to hearing all about you. Well, let's begin. We'll start with Brian. Can we hear you?
I think Erica has to unmute him.
Brian, yep.
You might want to mute.
And Brian, please tell the voters about yourself.
I'm working on it.
Yes, we know. Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you. So, all right. So first of all, I'd like to thank the Rotary for hosting this forum. Our communities of Mason and Brookline are dealing with an unprecedented health crisis. We all have friends and loved ones who have either contracted COVID-19 or been directly impacted by it. We all worry about our loved ones who are seniors or have health conditions and how they can be impacted by this highly contagious disease. We need to come together to care for each other, to protect each other, and to slow the spread of this disease. Things will return to normal, but it will take time and sacrifice. My great passion has always been for our community, whether it was serving on the Lions Club or the Friends of the Library or on the 250th Celebration Committee. I strive to find ways to bring the community together because we are stronger together. I'm currently the chairman of the Finance Committee, the chairman of the Cemetery Trustees, and I also serve on the Co-op Budget Committee. I'm also a longtime civil rights activist at the legislature. I've been an engineer at BAE Systems for 26 years, and I've lived in Brookline for 18 years. I am running because we need leadership that will follow the scientific recommendations of the CDC, including wearing masks and social distancing. COVID-19 has to be the highest priority of the legislature, and my background as a grassroots activist and my experience serving the community will make me an effective legislator.
Thank you, Brian. Diane, if we can hear you, if you start with your opening statement, we'll give Erica a minute to unmute you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. I'd first like to thank the Rotary for organizing this event and for the other candidates for participating. The question that people need to keep in mind as you listen to each of the candidates here tonight is this: what type of state do you want to live in, and what do you want New Hampshire to look like at the end of the next 2 years? Do you want to live in a state where the police are defunded, where there's chaos and looting, and our neighborhoods are dangerous, or where law and order is upheld and there's safety and security? Do you want to live in a state that has an income tax and a sales tax, or do you want to preserve the New Hampshire advantage? Do you want to live in a state with a tanked economy, or with a strong economy, high-paying jobs, and financial security for you and your family? Do you want to live in a state where people from out of state vote without proof of residency, canceling out your vote in the and the Electoral College is abolished? Or do you want our state elections to be fair and your vote protected? Over the past 2 years in New Hampshire, we've seen the current majority in Concord vote for legislation that seeks simply to erode the New Hampshire advantage, and it will destroy our way of life. I'm running for state rep to protect our freedoms and rights, as well as to preserve the New Hampshire advantage. I hope that over the course of this evening, I'll be able to earn your vote on November 3rd.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Diane. Chris Wheeler, 90 seconds to opening statement.
All right, thank you. I'd like to thank the Rotary Club for their ongoing public service work of informing the voting public of who their local candidates are and what they stand for. My name's Chris Wheeler. I'm a candidate for one of 2 District 26 state representative seats, and I consider myself a progressive, small d Democrat who aspires to be an inclusive voice prepared to advocate for policy solutions that can transcend partisan politics. I'm motivated by a passion for better government and feel that the crises of our time, a global pandemic threatening our economic and political collapse, ironically is an open door to a silver lining opportunity to reinvent how government functions. We have the chance to make it more transparent and accountable to citizen stakeholders. As an American patriot, I'm outraged by how political power over the past 4 years has been wielded to the dark arts of deception and concealment. We must now just acknowledge what it manifests, a cancerous partisanship that incapacitates the body politic. New voices aware of this critical condition are now needed at all levels of government. We need citizen legislators who have the resolve to reinvent how public discourse is conducted, protected, and projected into the public consciousness. I aspire to be such a voice, believe in greater openness and focus on relevant data and facts in government discourse, combined with the accountability, can lead to better government performance, as well as credibility. Past generations striving for a more perfect union have sacrificed blood, sweat, and tears to manifest a more equitable and inclusive democracy, and our work is not done. We don't need flag wavers committed to win-lose, zero-sum politics. We need genuine patriots to stand up for principles of one nation, under God, indivisible, and with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Please try to keep to the time. John Lewicki, you have the floor.
Good evening, and thanks to the Rotary for having this event. I'm John Lewicki, candidate for state representative. I've lived in this district for 33 years and in New Hampshire for most of my adult life. Unfortunately, my part of the district is on the poor side of the digital divide, so I can't appear by video. I've previously served as your state representative. When Mason was withdrawing from the Scenic District, I served on the Messinic Board. I was also the first clerk of the new Mason District. I'm a Vietnam veteran and have spent most of my life working in electrical and systems engineering. Much of my experience was in startup companies in New Hampshire and elsewhere. I'm not smart enough to run your life. Neither are any of the other candidates for any office on the ballot. I firmly believe the world is a better place when the vast majority of the population makes their own decisions about their own lives. Although there will always be a small minority of the population who need help managing their lives, that's no excuse for a few hyper-smart people in government to impose their whims on the rest of us. To quote one well-known New Hampshire politician on numerous well-intended programs that went wrong, "It wasn't supposed to work that way." The reason the well-intended programs always go wrong is that a few people can't possibly understand the needs of everyone. The reality is that our society is smarter when many people are making their own decisions than when a few people are deciding for all, no matter how smart the few may be. While I served as state rep, I tried to do the people's business as the people have defined it in their constitution. If elected again, I will continue to respect people's rights to live their own lives and make their own decisions.
Wonderful, John. Thank you very much. Thank you for keeping to the time. So Diane, if I could pick on you for the first question. What is your understanding of the responsibility of the office you seek?
Well, my understanding, of the Office of State Rep, we know that it's a volunteer position that pays $100 a year, but I don't see it as a volunteer position. I see it as a job, and a very important job at that. Because if I am elected, I fully realize that my decisions in Concord will undoubtedly and most certainly affect the daily lives of my constituents as well as Granite Staters. And it's something that I take very, very seriously. And to that end, I will commit myself fully to performing my duties as your state rep. And I will make myself available to my constituents so that, very importantly, that I can listen and learn from them in order to faithfully represent them in Concord. Also, as a state rep, one must be informed on the issues and be well researched. And that's something that I delight in doing, and I love researching issues. As a state rep, it's very important that one collaborate with other legislators, which I acknowledge and I fully intend to do on both sides of the aisle. And also, I need to be available and committed to this job. And since my family is grown and I do not work outside of the home, I'm 100% committed to representing the people of both Brookline and Mason full-time with honesty, integrity, and dedication.
Thank you, Diane. Chris, I will ask you the same question. I'll repeat the question.
Remind folks that they have 60 seconds to respond.
And please understand that you have 60 seconds. We're trying to keep this in a reasonable time frame, and if we keep running over, it's going to stretch. So Chris, question is, what is your understanding of the responsibilities of the office you seek, or the office of state rep?
My understanding is pretty simple. I think we are charged as citizens to function in the legislature as an information, gatherer, and then a disseminator of what we're understanding to the citizens, the voters. My hope is to use the position as a way of educating voters to how policy positions are being discussed, and then
30 seconds.
how they are in fact being decided. So it is an information clearinghouse position.
Thank you. John Lewicki, I will ask the same question. What is your understanding of the responsibility of the Office of State Representative?
Good evening. I have been a state representative before, and we make a lot of little decisions and a few really big ones. Throughout all of this, my philosophy has been to communicate with people, to understand their positions, to understand the bills that we have before us, because we don't do anything without a bill. I'm not in favor of making big changes, big policy differences. We have a state that is working extremely well, certainly in comparison to Washington or any of the other states around. What we need to do, as I will agree with Mr. Wheeler, that we really need to get rid of the hyperpartisanship in Concord. And unfortunately, it has come from both sides, and it would be really good if we could work together to do the people's business and do it in accordance with the people's constitution, because that is the only defining document that binds the legislature.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Brian, you get to say the final word on this. What is your understanding of the responsibilities of the Office of State Rep?
Well, fundamentally, the big goal of the legislature is to leave the world a better place for our children. That means, provide for a quality education so that they have the best opportunities to advance themselves and to lead a happy life, to provide them with a good, clean environment that will serve them and future generations going forward. And it's providing for a strong economy that provides the jobs that we'll need. But on a more personal level, it really is about constituent service. It's about listening to and respecting all of your constituents and understanding their needs and communicating with them to make people's lives better as much as you can.
Wonderful. Very good. Thank you, Brian. Chris, I'm going to defer to you for the next question. What has motivated you to run for office? I can't hear Chris. Hold on, Chris, we can't hear you.
Chris, you need to unmute yourself.
Thank you. I'm sorry. What's motivating me? Really present reality. But I'd like to break it down into three basic segments: public education, concerns about taxation, and then finally voting rights and electoral reform. How much time do I have again? 60 seconds?
Seconds, sir. Yes.
30 seconds.
Not under 30.
I'm going to be brief. We need more equitable public funding of our schools. We have a lot of cost shifting down to towns and districts that is putting an increased burden on families. I'd like to see us evaluate how the formula works and find new ways to lower the cost of education and improve the outcomes. With taxation, I'm not a proponent of new income taxes or sales taxes. I'd like us to look to new economic development, tax and technology innovation, new business markets as places where we can raise a new tax base. And then thank you.
Yeah, and you can continue during other questions. John, I will ask you the same question. Actually, a little different. What has motivated to run for office again?
Could you repeat the question, please? You're breaking up sometimes on me.
What has motivated you to run for office?
Okay. Basically, I am in favor of people's individual rights, people's right to run their own lives, and to have it done without as little interference as possible from the state. Unfortunately, we've been in a situation where people have, the courts particularly have decided to legislate, and I think we really need to work on that. The Claremont decisions and so forth have put us under decades of judicial rule in the form of edicts. It's time for the people to be heard on this. I believe that the legislature should propose a good amendment or amendments to our Constitution that will clarify what the plain English of Article 83 says, which talks about cherish and encourage, and somehow we have a court that has turned that into must fund, and that is clearly wrong, and it is clearly beyond the purview of the courts, and that's one thing that I would certainly support, and hopefully we will get something out of this legislature in the form of a constitutional amendment.
Time.
Thank you. It's perfect timing. Diane, what has motivated you to run for office?
So my motivation for running for office is basically an extension of my history of volunteering in the 26 years that I've resided in Brookline. So, and more as it pertains to the state, what really concerns me is over the past 2 years, we've seen the current majority in Concord vote for legislation that will erode our New Hampshire advantage and hurt our way of life. And it's really important that in this election cycle that we elect candidates who are willing and able to work with other legislators and to be able to pass legislation that's meaningful to the people of New Hampshire. And we need people who will work to protect the rights of Granite Staters. So that's basically why I'm running, is to preserve and protect our freedoms and the New Hampshire advantage.
Perfect timing.
Okay.
Brian, I will ask again, so it gives you a chance to think. What has motivated you to run for office?
Well, we're facing two very large crises right now. The first is obviously COVID-19. We need to deal with that. It's affecting every aspect of our lives and our businesses. The second is the economic impact of COVID-19. Our economy is struggling right now. We're getting along relatively well so far, but the longer this stretches out, the more difficult it's going to be. These are the two issues I believe the legislature really needs to focus on. Now, people who know me know I've run for before, and so I have many motivations, as a base. I'm particularly concerned with education, public education, the fact that the state has been historically has been supporting public education less and less. That was changed here recently in the current legislature, but more needs to be done with that. I'm also very concerned with the environment and renewable energy. Those are particular areas of interest that I'm particularly passionate about. But right now we're dealing with two crises, and those have to come first.
Thank you. Thank you. John, I'll give you the first opportunity. This is slightly different, and hopefully we can get the nuance from you. The question is, what if any personal beliefs or philosophy govern how you would carry out the responsibility of the office? I can read it again if you like.
Okay, no, that's fine. Basically, I am a constitutionalist. I believe that we should be governing ourselves. We do not. You should not be governed by courts. We should not be governed by anything other than the people themselves. And the people set that through their Constitution, and we should respect the Constitution rather than attempting to get around it. And in our present Constitution, as I mentioned previously, we have the constitutional crisis. I disagree with Brian on the COVID thing. I believe that it's going to be over by the time we're sitting in office. And so I think we should be concentrating on the future. And by the time we're in, I believe that will be the past.
Thank you, John. And I will ask you the same question. What if any personal beliefs or philosophy would govern how you would carry out the responsibilities of this office?
Great, thank you. So my philosophy has always been one of balance and moderation. I've always tried to find, for every issue that's out there, I see both the pros and the cons of it. And I think that we need to be more honest in acknowledging the pros and cons of every decision that we make. There's often not a right decision to make. There's maybe a best decision that can be made by looking at both sides. I don't believe in assuming the worst of people or assuming the worst of people's motivations. You really kind of need to understand both sides of the issue, of any given issue, to try to figure out what's reasonable and balanced way of moving forward. That's been my philosophy.
Excellent. Thank you. Chris, let me ask the same question to get to listen to it again. What if any personal beliefs or philosophy would govern how you would carry out the responsibility of this office? You're on mute again, Chris.
Thank
There
you.
go.
My philosophy is essentially a John Stuart Mill philosophy, the greatest good for the greatest number. And I think that begins with actually looking at how do we attain better government? And I believe that's going to come through a greater transparency and accountability, meaning that as citizen legislators, we need to do a better job or find new mechanisms that inform the public. I think so much of what we're challenged by is a lack of moving information out of the legislature to the public and getting feedback and bringing it back to the legislature. So I'm looking for new ways to communicate to the public, and then the public respond on an ongoing basis, and then allow government through transparency and accountability to actually build the credibility that the public is looking for. It'll make for better leadership, and it'll make for better.
Chris, thank you. Diane, you get to have the last word on this. What if any personal beliefs or philosophy would govern how you would carry out the responsibilities of this office?
Okay, with regard to philosophy, I maintain that people, the citizenry, have certain inalienable rights and freedoms that they are born with, and it's not given to them by the government. And the purpose of government is to protect those rights and those freedoms. So I believe in small, limited government. Additionally, I am a constitutionalist. I revere the Constitution, and I will uphold both the U.S. and New Hampshire Constitution. Anything that we do as a government must be done within the framework of the Constitution. Also, the rule of law is very important to me. And finally, as an engineer, I have a degree in electrical engineering, and by nature, I'm a problem solver and a critical analytical thinker. Therefore, in anything that I approach, anything that I do, I seek first to uncover the facts, to analyze the situation completely and fully with no biases, uncovering the positives and the negatives, and then fully analyzing that to make a fully, informed decision, weighing everything and coming up with the best solution.
Thank you, Diane.
So those, yep,
Okay.
okay.
Very good. Chris, let me start with you on the next question. What relevant skills or experiences do you believe you would bring to this office?
An ability to listen, the ability to ask good questions, and the ability to synthesize the information into essentially consensus thought. So it's a synergistic talent that I believe I would bring, largely because I'd like to see us transcend the partisanship of governing for the benefit of a few versus governing for the benefit of the many. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Very good. Brian, I will, same question. What relevant skills or experiences do you believe you would bring to this office?
Great. So I spent several years as an activist going up to Concord very regularly to advocate for certain civil rights issues. I was one of the founders of the New Hampshire Freedom to Marry organization, which successfully argued for to legalize gay and lesbian marriage. I was one of the founders of Out and Equal New Hampshire, which was successful in lobbying for changes to the adoption laws, which had restricted gay and lesbian couples from being able to adopt. I was also heavily involved in the creation of the Martin Luther King holiday. I was also involved in the repeal of New Hampshire's 18% inheritance tax that from the Citizens for Inheritance Tax Equality. And there have been several other issues as well that I've worked on over the years. So I have extensive experience in the legislature, not as a legislator, but as an activist and somebody who was working with the legislators throughout the process. I also have extensive background, as I mentioned earlier, here in Brookline from the Finance Committee, the Budget Committee, budgeting, and that is my extensive background.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. John asked the same question. What relevant skills or experiences do you believe you would bring to this office?
It appears we have a preponderance of engineers here tonight, and it's clear that engineering skills are useful in the legislature. I found them to be useful to be able to understand the issues and to be able to give them priorities. I, like others, have been active in the legislature both before I was elected previously, working on the pipeline issue, which was a major issue here, and lobbying for various other things on my own, for my own purposes. And once again, that's always been to preserve individual rights. I was a member of the committee and voted for the revision of the antiquated marriage laws, which we had in terms of age of marriage. And we make, what I think people will find when they're elected is we make small steps. We don't make big changes, and I think that's a good thing. And so, understanding the process, I had 100% attendance when I was in the legislature, and I hope to do as well the next time.
Very good. Thank you. And you get to what relevant skills or experiences do you believe you would bring to this office?
Yes, as I mentioned before, I have a Bachelor of Science degree in engineering, so therefore I'm a critical thinker and a problem solver. I have the demonstrated ability to understand complex issues, as well as an attention to detail and the ability to synthesize, sort through details, boil it down, and I'm also, I feel that I have very strong communication skills. Both I can boil down a complex situation and communicate it in a way that is consumable by the average person. I have strong listening skills, and I have extremely good writing skills. In fact, I've already written a number of House bills and Senate bills for past and present legislators. And additionally, I've served on the Hollis Brookline Cooperative Budget Committee. In the first year, I was unanimously elected as the chair of that committee. So I also have leadership skills, and I'm able to figure things out on the fly, obviously. I was
Thank you.
chair.
Sorry.
Thank you,
I didn't mean
Diane.
to do that.
Okay, we'll start with Brian. What are some of the issues that the person elected to the office you seek is likely to face, meaning like taxes, state level healthcare decisions?
Right. So I've mentioned COVID-19 several times, so I won't harp on that any further. But I do believe that is the #1 issue that we're going to be facing. And closely related to that is going to be getting our economy through these challenging times. That's a very complex issue. There's a lot of moving parts to that. So those are going to be the two big challenges. But there is always a lot of other challenges that come up. We always have issues dealing with the environment, we need to continue really to make progress on renewable energy. We have to secure the future of our state, and we can't rely on oil and gas. We need to move towards electricity, and more specifically, electricity that's been generated through renewable forms to make sure that our future, our children are energy independent. There are a vast array of issues that come up, but those are the top ones.
Thank you, Brian. Chris, I'll ask the same question of you. What are some of the issues that the person elected to the office you think is likely to face, such as tax, state level healthcare decisions, et cetera?
Unquestionably, that list is pretty short. It begins with the COVID-19 pandemic. I think in New Hampshire, I think education not being affordable enough. I believe that everyone has concerns about taxation in this state. We have a taxation or revenue stool that's really one-legged, not three. It's relying on property taxes only, or mostly. And I think that we need to be very creative about how we might raise new revenues without burdening citizens with regressive taxes. We need to look to the business sector and innovation in that space. Lastly, I agree with Brian. Renewable energy is a very important thing. We have to move off of fossil fuels if we're not planning for that transition to renewables. We're missing the boat. It's also a great source of jobs as well as innovation that leads to new business. Lastly, I'm a strong proponent of voting rights and election reform. And I believe that the equity or equal status of all citizens can begin at this level. If we open up our elections, make it easier to vote.
More opportunities to speak about it. So thank you. Diane, let me ask the question again. So it might not have come clear, but the question is, what are some of the issues that the person elected to the office you seek is likely to face, rather than what you think your issues are? What do you think is likely to face? So things like tax, state level healthcare. That was the question.
So clearly COVID has raised a lot of issues that need immediate attention by the legislature. So first, although Governor Sununu has demonstrated solid leadership with his response to COVID, there's one improvement that I see, and that's with regard to emergency powers. In the short term, the law as written is appropriate, say for a natural disaster, but after the first 21 days, as in the case of a pandemic, I feel that it's important that the governor isn't making executive orders for months on end and essentially bypassing the legislature. So in the next session, it's going to be very important that the legislator looks at this issue and studies it to perhaps make a decision about involving the legislature when this emergency orders need to be extended beyond 21 days. Other topics are the economy. We need to strengthen the economy. We need to
Again,
time.
Yes,
Is time up? Oh, okay.
fair enough. So John, I'll ask the question again. We get to round this. And the question is, what are some of the issues that the person elected to the office you seek is likely to face? Rather than asking, what do you think will happen there? John, are you?
What I found and was somewhat surprised at while I was in the legislature was that there are really two jobs. One of them is to work in committee, where one does work rather intensively, and the other one is to try to digest 1,000 bills that have been submitted and then several hundred more by the Senate. And while I was in committee, I was on Children and Family Law. We did a number of things. I mentioned the marriage bill. Another one we found was that Department of Youth and Family Services was not well enough funded, and the caseloads there, well, it had been mismanaged, and the caseloads had become totally unreasonable, and we did fight for more money for that. But I know that within the legislature, we have to make decisions. The money, there's not going to be more money. There's going to be a certain amount of money, and that money has to be spent wisely. And part of the decision making is to decide on how to spend it in the budget and how it will be spent, divided up within the budget. And that's really a major issue. It's the people's money, and we need to spend it wisely.
Thank you, John. That's good. Diane, I'll see to you here. What are the responsibilities of the state rep?
The responsibilities?
Yes.
Okay, the responsibilities of the state rep would be to uphold the vote that the voters, when you were voted in. And what that means is that you need to be 100% committed to the job. So you need to show up for votes. You need to participate and fully dedicate yourself to thorough committee work. You need to make sure that you understand the issues at hand in the bills and what you're voting upon. Additionally, responsibility would be to meet with and listen to and communicate with your constituents, to be a conduit of information between what's going on in Concord and, bringing it back down to the towns that you represent. And also, understanding what are the needs of your constituents and advocating for them in Concord. Those to me are the responsibilities.
Very good. Brian, I asked the same question. What are the responsibilities of the state rep?
The state rep has a responsibility to future generations to make sure that we leave them with all of the advantages and the tools that we have, that the world should be a better place that we leave to them than what we were given to us. But we'll also have a fundamental responsibility to the voters. We need to communicate with them. We need to listen to them to understand, and to appreciate what it is that they're telling us, because we each only have our own experiences. We don't have all of the array of experiences that people around our district have. So it's really critical to be able to listen, to be able to communicate. We deal with literally 1,000 bills each session. understanding them is a challenge, but that is one of the responsibilities of this. You have to understand what it is that you're voting on. You have to actively participate. It does take some time and effort. The committees are very important. It's not just showing up for vote on the House floor. The committee work is really where the real work is.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
so
Brian.
constituents, yep.
John, if I would ask the same question, what are the responsibilities of the state rep?
Okay, the first responsibility of the state legislator is to the Constitution. We take an oath to it, to uphold it, the state Constitution, not the federal one. And understanding the Constitution, understanding the ramifications of what we might do, either in committee or in session, and how it is relates to the Constitution is our first duty. Beyond that, we all have aspirations, and we have our, I believe all of us would like to leave the state a better place. Some of us would like to leave the state a better place by not changing things dramatically because it's working well. Others would like to uproot what we have and to change many things. And to do so, I think, would be a disservice to the people because we have something that worked. We should stick with what we have that works rather than making big changes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. You get to round out this question. What are the responsibilities of the state rep?
I believe the state rep is needs to look at themselves as a citizen legislator who is committed to the mission of improving policy outcomes, doing the work of understanding the bills, listening to colleagues, and striving for an understanding beyond our personal filter. And then at last, understanding constitutional and constitutional frameworks and looking to also understand constituent views and communicate back to them how progress can be made.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. John, I will start with you for the next question. What issues do you especially want to address if you are elected?
I have a number of small issues I'd like to address. I've also been studying the Emergency Powers Law, which is 4:45. And as it turns out, that law does provide for input from the legislature. The governor can declare a state of emergency for 21 days. However, the state legislature can overturn that state of emergency at any time, even before the first 21 days. And this state legislature, controlled by the other party, has produced bill after bill spending money and knowing that they were going to the governor's veto while not addressing the present crisis. And I believe that the legislature should have been involved. I think that there should have been bipartisanship and a real work from the legislature to help address this crisis. Unfortunately, they've left Governor Sununu standing alone to do this all on his own.
Thank you, John. Brian, let me ask you the same question. What issues do you especially want to address if you are elected?
Sorry, hold on.
You're muted, hold on.
Thank you. As I mentioned before, the legislature has to address COVID and the economic recovery. But what I personally want to address really is the support for public education. The state has been slowly withdrawing the education funding, which has shifted the tax burden down to our local property taxes. And there are other ways in which the state has been withdrawing its support from public education. Public education is going to be the key for our economic future to provide for our children going forward. And that also includes making college more affordable. College in New Hampshire is notoriously being very expensive. We don't have much support from the state at all compared to the other states. Another issue in particular that's close to me is solar energy adoption. There are rules in place that make it very difficult for towns and communities to adopt solar. It's much easier for an individual. I mean, we have solar panels on our house, but for a town to do it, they put certain restrictions that are really restricting adoption of that.
Thank you, Brian. Chris, I'll ask you the same question. What issues do you especially want to address if you are elected?
Well, I'm foremost looking at the COVID pandemic as being the primary issue that we all have to focus on, and I will be as constructive as possible about protecting public safety, allowing our schools to reopen safely, and then finally looking at how we can recover from the economic damage from the ground up, meaning that I would be supportive in any legislation that is helping small and medium businesses who are primary job creators to recover. Second, I'm looking at greater support for public education so there's more support, more affordable. And I'd like to see us be more innovative in the way we're funding it. We may look at how COVID has impacted schooling and find new innovations that allow us to do a more effective job of educating while also spending less. Voting reform is very important to me personally. And I believe voting reform and election reform is necessary if we're going to create a more equitable society. And last, I'm very committed to protecting and expanding the ACA. I'm personally on ACA benefits, and it has been
one more chance.
Difference. Thank you.
Chris. Diane, I'll ask you this question again and get to round this one. What issues do you especially want to address if you are elected?
So COVID has pointed towards two issues that are important, and that would be boosting and helping the economy recover. And I would do that by creating a more business-friendly environment. I support reducing business taxes, cutting licensing requirements. Also, something that's very near and dear to my heart, it would be school choice. I support educational excellence that comes from high academic standards, and as COVID has demonstrated, one size does not fit all when it comes to education. I would like to see parents have the right to control the education of their children, to be able to choose the educational delivery system that works best for them, whether it be public, private, charter, micro, or homeschool. And so I also support accepting federal grant money to support school choice, and such as public charter schools. I would also like to see education tax credits expand, and also the education savings accounts. The purpose of schools is to educate.
Thank you. Thank you, Diane. This is the final question. It's more of an issue kind of question, so I get to close with that, and maybe we'll start with Chris. Your position on property tax, income tax, and minimum wage. You're on mute, Chris, you're muted.
My position on property tax, I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yes, sorry about that. Your position on property tax, income tax, and minimum wage.
I support a living wage for a minimum wage. I support open and transparent property taxation, and I'd like to see the legislature help families understand where their money's going, so greater transparency and accountability in property taxation. And then the third thing that you mentioned was?
Income tax.
I am against an income tax for this state. I really believe that the private sector can be the source of any taxes that need to be raised to meet public challenges.
Thank you. Diane, I'll let you answer the question again. Your position on property tax, income tax, and minimum wage.
Property taxes, that is by and large a local issue, and I am for reducing property taxes. I support school choice. I support restoring the ability to adopt SB2, and I support reforming the New Hampshire retirement system. That those efforts will help to lower our property taxes. With regard to income tax, I am opposed to an income tax. The mere idea of reducing property taxes through a new broad-based tax, such as an income tax, it's not practical. It might sound good, but to me, it's very impractical. Property taxes are raised and appropriated to address local and town spending.
Uh,
Time's up? and with regard to minimum wage, let the free market determine let businesses decide that. We have a federal minimum wage that's sufficient.
Thank you. Very good. John, I will ask the question, your position on property tax, income tax, and minimum wage.
Okay, my position on the property tax is I believe that we have something that's pretty good now. I realize that property taxes in Brookline are rather high, or perhaps extremely high might be a better description. I could see some wiggle room in distributing the state funds raised by the statewide property tax to perhaps make things more equitable. However, I think that we should retain the property tax because the one thing it does is it means we have local control. As long as people are hurting from the property tax, when they go to school district or town meeting, then they're going to be thinking about it. If we start doing things statewide, it is not going to work as well. I have signed the pledge against an income tax, and I am completely opposed to it. On the minimum wage, within the past week, I've gotten a card from the post office asking people to work for the holiday season for, I believe it's $17 an hour, don't quote me. I've been to Target, and right in front of Target, there is a big sign that says, please come work for us, $15 an hour to start. We don't need to have a minimum wage. We've already got it. It's set by the market, and it's already double what the federal minimum wage is. There's no reason that we should monkey with that. If there is a serious financial crisis, then maybe wages will come down. However, that's what the market can bear, and that's how the wages should be set.
Good, thank you. Thank you, John. Brian, you get to answer the last one. Your position on property tax, income tax, and minimum wage.
So the property taxes, it's a tough tax for people to pay. It's a very regressive tax. You know, as you retire, it becomes more difficult, and you're on a limited income, it becomes more difficult to pay. So it's not great, but it's what we have right now. And I would not support a major structural change to our tax base without the buy-in of the people. I don't think you can impose, you know, some significant structural change on people unless they support it. The income tax, like I said, I don't know that there's enough popular support to be able to do it. In theory, it would be better for individuals, but worse for the government in terms of reliability. But if, in my opinion, you know, you need the support of the people to make any sort of structural change, regardless of how you go. As for the minimum wage right now is not sufficient for New Hampshire. This is an expensive place to live. It is not a livable wage right here. It does need to be raised. I don't know exactly what to, but I'll let the experts provide that.
Thank you, Brian. That concludes the questions part. We're going to move to concluding statements. You each have 90 seconds to say what you would like to conclude for your voters. Chris, we'll start with you.
From my perspective, overall, the good news is all the answers that we need to craft equitable public policy that protects public health, educates our kids, and preserves the viability of our Commonwealth are out there. As a mentor of mine once said, it's all been said before, and another said, where there's a will, there's a way. And yet another said, truly, we all want the same thing. I truly believe these things, and I believe that a perspective of anything is possible is necessary for us to do better. If we can work together, agree on the right tools for the task, and adopt a new vision of what's possible, we can begin moving in a more productive direction that enables us to meet the challenges that we're confronted with. If money is speech and words are seeds, then metaphorically speaking, we need a new method of farming. We need to follow the money, look at how it's distributed, look how it's used and invested, and then look at how we're cultivating what is being produced from the garden. In other words, if we don't like what we're growing, we need to change up the seeds that we're planting, the nutrients applied, and the methods by which we farm. At the ballot box this year, we have a chance to get a lot of weeding done. I urge you to vote a Democratic down ballot is the best pivot we can make at this time to begin the earnest work of clearing the fields so that new seeds can be planted. and with a plan to find better seeds and implement farming methods that conserve resources, protect the land, and maximize yield, we can grow more abundant crops that'll sustain us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris Wheeler. Appreciate that. John, your concluding statement.
Okay. Washington said, government is not eloquence, government is not reason, government is force. Like fire, it's a dangerous servant and a fearful master. If government force is to be used, it must be done by the vote of the people or by the people's elected representatives. When making laws, the legislature should judge whether or not a proposed law conforms to the people's constitution. We found that leaving interpretation of the people's constitution to courts can and has resulted in the courts taking unto themselves powers reserved to those who have been elected by the people. Throughout history, from pharaohs to Plato's philosophical kings to emperors to presidents for life, we've seen the failures of a few people running everyone's lives. It doesn't make any difference whether the few people running things call themselves communists, monarchists, democratic socialists, conservatives, or libertarians. If a few people are running everything, the rest of the population is excluded, and a society is less intelligent and invariably poorer. It was here in New England that we found we could govern our towns well by meeting once a year and then electing a few of our own to run things for the rest of the year. The realization that we didn't need a king to run our lives led to our revolution and our constitutional state and federal governments. Again, none of the candidates on the ballot are smart enough to run your life. If government and laws reflect the whims of a few people, however smart they may be, we will all be poorer and our society will be less intelligent. When the few rule the many, it wasn't supposed to work that way, becomes the norm. While I served as state representative, I tried to do the people's business as the people have defined it in their constitution. If elected again, I will continue to respect people's rights to live their own lives and make their own decisions.
Thank you. Thank you, John Lewicki. Brian Rader, your concluding statements.
Every now and then we face a crisis that calls us to come together as a community. We need to protect not only our own health, but the health of our families, friends, and neighbors. I am running because we need the legislature that sets policies that are based on scientific CDC guidance, including masks and social distancing. This is a very real crisis. It takes action from all of us to protect and care for our community. There are many other reasons why I want to serve in the legislature. Our public schools have seen declining support from the state, a trend which was finally reversed in the current session, but more needs to be done, such as increasing student access to broadband. I care passionately about the environment, renewable energy, affordable college, and making New Hampshire a magnet for high-tech, well-paying jobs. I spent several years as a civil rights activist in Concord, achieving both marriage equality and opening adoption for gay and lesbian couples, advocating for a Martin Luther King holiday, and repeal of New Hampshire's 18% inheritance tax. More recently, I've spent the last several years serving on town and school budget committees, where I've seen the direct impact of the state downshifting has caused on our property taxes. I have the skills and knowledge needed to be an effective legislator, and I ask for your vote.
Thank you, Brian Rader. Diane, your concluding statement.
Make no mistake about it, the future of our great state is in jeopardy. We need to preserve our New Hampshire way of life. In the New Hampshire House of Representatives, I will work with other members to fully restore and secure the New Hampshire advantage, to preserve all that is great about our state, and to protect our future and the futures of our children and grandchildren. I've lived in Brookline for 26 years, in New Hampshire for 32 years. I have 2 adult children, and I've been a military spouse for 30 years. I know New Hampshire and what makes New Hampshire a great place to call home. I have a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering with high distinction from WPI, and I've worked as an engineer before raising my family full-time. I've been a volunteer in my community and my children's schools. I've served as a pro bono special ed advocate. I've also been elected to public office, serving as the chair and a member of the Hollis Brookline Co-op Budget Committee. Since my family has grown and I don't work outside the home, I am 100% committed to representing my constituents full-time with dedication, honesty, and integrity. As your state rep, I will listen to you, and I will be a strong voice in Concord for the people of Brookline and Mason. I ask for your vote on November 3rd. Together, We can keep the Granite State great.
Thank you, Dan Power. And that was everyone. Thank you for spending the time with us and informing us about yourselves. And I wish you luck for all for the election. Next time we'll meet will be Wednesday, October 14th. And we'll listen to District 27 and District 40 candidates. Thank you, everyone. And if you have more questions, please send them to forum@hbrotary.org. Thank you.